Hello guys, it's Dale here, and in this video I'd like to show you how to properly place stop loss using volume profile and price action. I will show you this on examples on the ES, which is futures for Standard & Poor's 500 index, and also on Bitcoin, but you can apply those principles on other markets as well. Now, the reason I prefer placing stop loss using volume profile and price action is that this method very nicely adjusts to the current market volatility, and that's why this is my favorite method to determine where to place my stop losses. So let's start with a couple of examples. I'll start with the ES. You are looking at a 30-minute time frame, and the first example I'm going to show you is on a trading level which I published a couple of days ago. Let me just load up my flexible volume profile indicator here, like this. So in here there was a heavy volume zone from which there was a support. The beginning of that heavy volume zone, this was the support. This is where the support got hit. This was the reaction to it. Now regarding the stop loss placement, there are basically two rules which you need to follow. Stop loss needs to go behind heavy volume zone, which in this case would be right here. Also, stop loss could go below swing point. In this case, this would be behind this swing point. But if I used the second stop loss, the stop loss in here, then it would be just too much, you know. This is the distance from the trade entry to the stop loss. This would be way too much for intraday trade. For this reason, it's best to use the first method and place the stop loss behind the heavy volume zone, which would mean in here. So this would be the stop loss, the beginning of that heavy volume zone. That was the level, the long level, and preferred take profit. I know this video is not about take profits, but preferred take profit is at least risk reward ratio 1. So this distance needs to be in here. All right, so the take profit would be somewhere in here. So what you do is basically you first find the support or resistance level, like I did in here. This is the support level. And then you look at the volume profile and either place the stop loss behind the heavy volume zone. This is option number 1, or behind swing point. This is the swing point. So this would be potential stop loss number 2. As I was saying, in this case, it would be too much. So in this case, it would be best to place the stop loss in here. All right. So this is the first example of the volume accumulation setup, one of the volume profile setups that I like to trade. Let me show you on a couple of more examples. The next one will be on trend setup. In this video, I'm not going to talk about trade entries too much. I'm going to focus on stop loss placement. So I'm just going to mention that right here, based on this volume cluster, this should be a trade entry for a short trade. So short from here. So first, as I was saying, we have the short entry level, and then you want to look for a stop loss. In this case, you can place the stop loss behind this heavy volume zone, as well as above the swing point. This is the swing point, which is also a little bit above this heavy volume zone the short level is based on. So ideal place for a stop loss is right here. All right. Now talking about take profit, you want to measure this distance, and this should be the same distance. So take profit would be somewhere in here. So you basically determine where take profit is based on stop loss. This is the easiest way what you can do. I actually prefer using a volume-based take profit, but I'll talk about this probably in some other video. In this video, I want to talk about stop loss placement. So this is how to place that stop loss on this trade. Another example I wanted to show you, a very similar example actually. This is a long trade scenario right there. This was heavy volume zone. Ideal place for a long would be here because there was also confluence with a price action setup which says that resistance became a support in here, but this is the entry point for a long trade. A stop loss in this case would be behind the heavy volume zone, so in here, and also as you can see it is below the swing point. All right, so this is the stop loss behind heavy volume zone and below the swing point. Now another trading example right here. This was rejection setup, and there was a significant volume zone within the rejection. So the long entry would be somewhere in here at the beginning of that heavy volume zone. In this case, it looks like the price missed the trade entry, but it doesn't matter because I want to talk about the stop loss placement here. Stop loss in this case should be behind the heavy volume zone. So it could be in here or below the swing point. Now this depends on your style of trading. If you're okay with using stop loss this wide, then you can use stop loss like this. All right. If you prefer tighter stop losses, then go for the stop loss which is behind the heavy volume area, which would be right here. Let me go for another trading example. So let's first talk about this rotation zone and about the volumes which were accumulated here. This is not ideal trading scenario. This is not really a trade that I'd like to take, but it suffices for me showing you how to place a stop loss. So if you decided to trade from those heavy volumes here, then stop loss placement should be behind the heavy volume zone, below swing point. This will be the swing point, and in here this place is behind the heavy volume zone. So this would be stop loss if you decided to go long from here. As I was saying, this is not ideal trading scenario. I won't be trading this level. The volume profile shape is not looking that good for me to trade. But anyways, another example would be this volume cluster in here, which means trade entry here. Stop loss should be behind heavy volume zone, which is roughly in here, and behind swing point. In this case, there is not really any clear swing point, so the best thing we can do is just place the stop loss behind the heavy volume zone. If I zoom it in a bit, then you can see that the price turned at the stop loss level. In this case, the higher volatility was caused by very strong macro news concerning the US dollar and the ES. So this is not a scenario where I would like to trade, but we are talking about stop loss placement, and the stop loss for this trade should be in here. All right. Now, last example on the ES is a setup which I call the rejection setup, formed in here, those volumes. In this case, this is the short level. Stop loss is pretty obvious. You place it behind the swing point and behind the heavy volume zone. So this is the ideal stop loss for this trade with this trade entry. All right. So remember, stop loss should go behind heavy volume zone, and second option behind rejection point, behind the swing point. Ideally, as in this case, both combined, which is behind heavy volume zone and also at the same place at the reaction point, or in other words, at the swing point. So that was a couple of examples on the ES. Let me now switch over to Bitcoin chart. The logic will be the same, but since you guys were asking for it, I may cover Bitcoin as well. So here we are on Bitcoin, and I'll give you a couple of more examples of stop loss placement. So let me first start with this heavy volume zone. This was actually a level which I published. I sent you that in an email a couple of days ago. We had a short level here, somewhere from this place, based on those heavy volumes. Stop loss would be behind heavy volume zone, which means behind this heavy volume zone, and above a swing point, in this case, ideally here. This is the swing point. This is the heavy volume zone. So ideal stop loss would be in here, right? For trade entry here. Now, another example. This was heavy volume zone with trade entry from this area, beginning of that heavy volume zone. So the long would be from here. Stop loss would be behind heavy volume zone again, behind the swing point. Now I like to look for the closest swing point. Closest swing point, that's this one. All right, so stop loss at this swing point behind those heavy volumes. So this would be the stop loss. I should zoom it in a bit so you can see it better. Right, this is the swing point the trading level is based on. Those are the heavy volumes. This is the heavy volume zone. So if you place a stop loss in here, then the stop loss is behind heavy volume zone and at the swing point, with trade entry somewhere in here. Okay. Now, next one. This is a trade which I published. I'm not sure if I published that publicly or just for members, I'm not sure, but we had a short from this volume cluster. This is where the price hit it. This was the reaction, and stop loss ideally in here, because this is the swing point. I remember this trade making it to the take profit and then the price turning. So take profit was somewhere in here if you are trading with a risk reward ratio 1. But anyways, that's beside the point, because the point is that the stop loss should be in here, right behind heavy volume zone and at the swing point. When you have that rejection setup like this, it's always best to place the stop loss at the swing point of the strong rejection. All right, that's what I do. That's what I prefer. Okay, so next one. Potential long from this heavy volume zone. Beginning of that heavy volume zone, this would be the long. And stop loss for this trade, again, should be behind this heavy volume zone. Ideally, if you can place that also below a swing point. This is the swing point. So ideal stop loss placement would be in here. If you want it tighter, then it could also be in here. But in this case, I would prefer it to be below the swing point, all right? Because in my opinion, it's always better to have stop loss below heavy volumes and also at the same time below the swing point. So that's about that. There's one more. So in this case, this is active level, which still hasn't been tested yet. The level is at 23,390 on Bitcoin, and the level is based on those volumes, beginning of that heavy volume zone. So it's short from here. But what I wanted to mention here is the stop loss. It should go behind the heavy volume zone and above swing point. This is the latest swing point here in this zone. So this is where the stop loss should go. All right. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. There are only 2 rules to follow. If you remember those, you should be fine. And as I was saying, this is my preferred way to place stop loss orders, because this approach takes into consideration the volumes or the current volatility and the current market sentiment. So that's why I trade like this, and that's what you can do as well. You can use this for any trading instrument, not just the ES or the Bitcoin. And you can also use this with any time frame. So it doesn't really matter that right now we are looking at a 30-minute chart, because if this was a daily chart, then I would place the stop loss in exactly the same way, exactly same logic. All right, only with different time frames. So it's pretty handy that you don't need to adjust anything. You just place your stop loss according to those 2 simple rules. All right, so that's about the video. I hope you guys found it useful. And if you are not one of our members yet, what you can do to significantly improve your trading is join us on my website, which is at trader-dale.com. If you click this button, which says Browse Courses, then you can join us in one of our educational and indicator courses. There's the Elite Pack, which focuses on volume profile trading, and below that, there's the Order Flow Pack, which focuses on day trading using order flow. So that's about today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, happy trading.